Manchester United's pursuit for an interim manager continues, but no matter where you look, one name keeps popping up. Michael Carrick. Now, we all know what he was as a player. He was fantastic. He was an absolute joy to watch. One of my personal favourite players of all time. But how about as a manager? How does he profile? How does he want his team to play? And what would he do if he was to get the job at Manchester United? So let's start off with the shape and the sort of structure from Carrick's team, with Middlesbrough being the team that we are looking at here. Now, of course, shape isn't the most important thing. The more important thing is how players move, the intentions, the system and things like that. But I do think this is a nice framework to begin with. On paper, Carrick's side were always very much in a 4-2-3-1, but on the pitch it would look quite different, with the team moving into multiple different shapes throughout the game. For example, on goal kicks, we would see a 4-2-4 shape, for example, the 10 moving a little bit further forward to join a striker, or you might even want to call this a 4-2-2-2, depending on how you look at it. However, as the team moved a little bit further forward, let's say they successfully played out from the back and they moved the ball towards the halfway line, the shape would then change. The right back would play a tucked in role, like we see from so many fullbacks in the modern game, forming a back three with the two other centre backs. And that means the fullbacks got to go somewhere else. That could be inside, but under Carrick, it was a wider role. The left back regularly flying forward down the left-hand side, allowing the left winger to come inside the pitch, and now we see more of a 3-2-4-1 shape. This was something that Carrick wanted to see from his team. And in a way, I see how this could work with the current United squad. Now, if we picture it in the United squad, it probably looks something like this, and there's a few things that we need to point out. First of all, the back three, or the back four turned back three. Luke Shaw is a player who has always liked to be released from left back to move further forward. He's always been very good at that role. Lissandro Martinez and Mazraoui provide plenty of ball progression from the back. In Casemiro and Kobbie Mainoo midfield, you've got someone who can dribble in Kobbie, and in Casemiro you've got someone with that longer passing range. And this ability to play in the centre is very important. We'll come back to that. On the left, you've got Cunha drifting inside. It's perfect. You've got Bruno Fernandes nice and high. Here, there's a bit more of a problem. Now, Sesko to me makes a lot of sense for reasons that we will discuss shortly. On the right, you are potentially losing Amad, which isn't ideal. It's fantastic squad depth, but he sort of deserves to play. Perhaps there is a world, though, where you could move Mbeumo inside onto the left in this position here, and Amad could go wide right. That is something to consider, but this is sort of roughly how I think Carrick would line up. Now, you may be thinking that this in-possession shape looks very, very familiar, and it is. This isn't too far removed from how Ruben Amorim would set his team up on the ball, purely in terms of a shape and positioning idea. You know, this is a shape that a lot of top teams use. Manchester City have used this shape over the years. Arsenal often continue to use this shape. And the reason why so many teams like to do this is because it allows you to potentially get some overloads in some really dangerous parts of the pitch. We all know that there is 4 players in the middle of the pitch here. But the idea with Carrick's idea, starting in the 4-2-3-1, we must remember, is that you get yourself an extra midfielder a little bit higher up the pitch. So rather than just having 2 central midfielders, Bruno is sort of this extra midfielder who goes and plays a little bit higher, and you get the support from the wide zone. Again, if we imagine this is Cunha, that could make sense, and this is something that Carrick might potentially like to do. This is how he could shape up with his team. Lots of players in the middle of the pitch with the idea of trying to overload the opposition, but what Carrick does is puts more of a focus of playing inside. You almost make or take more advantage of these extra numbers in the box. However, that's not to say Carrick only wants to play through the middle. He is also a man that likes wide play, which isn't really surprising considering you played in a Sir Alex Ferguson side at Old Trafford week in, week out. It's not surprising that he likes to see width. He does like to see wide threat. He does like to see players getting on the ball. And this shape, in theory, allows that with, you know, this back three creating the narrow opposition shape, allowing you that access out wide. So the key, if the shape is similar, the key is going to be all about how the players actually play within the shape. Yep, it's that time of the video where I quickly pop up on the screen and ask if you guys could please subscribe to the channel, please. You know the goal. It's 90,000 by the end of the month. I need your help, so let's try and make it happen, please. So Michael Carrick himself was a midfielder, and I think that is often reflected in the way that he asks his team to play. He often likes to have a central midfielder who can get on the ball. It was often Hayden Hackney at Middlesbrough, someone who can show off that passing range, because Carrick does put a focus on trying to play through the middle of the pitch where possible. So he puts all of these players central close to each other and asks them to find each other. Now, during his early days at Middlesbrough, I think the idea was a little bit limited because it was a little bit flat and therefore a little bit predictable. Often when we talk about this box midfield, that can be a bit too much of a box like this. These lateral sideways passes aren't really going to cause anyone a problem, and playing vertically is great in theory, but you're always just asking a player to receive with their back to goal, which means they're quite likely to be under pressure and quite likely to be tackled. And this was a bit of a problem. However, Carrick soon sort of evolved his idea, and we started to see a more staggered approach start to form in midfield, and this is when his side started to kick on a little bit. Now, staggered midfield is just a small change, a small tinkering of starting position. It just involves, for example, Casemiro playing a little bit deeper, Kobbie Mainoo going a little bit wider but also maybe a little bit higher, Bruno Fernandes also maybe dropping deeper and a little bit wider, and Cunha doing something the same. Now, of course, these players are still in very similar zones, but they've just changed ever so slightly, and that changes the pass that you can play, but also the pass that you can receive. The pass from the double pivot is no longer a simply horizontal lateral one, it is now ever so slightly forward, which means this player can get themselves onto the ball, can run onto the ball, and can have their body open, can play on the half turn. And if you can play on the half turn, you can face forward. If you can face forward, you're more likely to play a progressive pass or make a progressive action. And it's the same for the players higher up the pitch as well. As this pass is played, let's say into this position here, on that little diagonal pass, it means that Cunha or whoever it could be in this position could receive with their body more open. They're not here, back to goal and immediately tackled. They've got their body open, and defenders hate this. A player receiving on the half turn is a nightmare to defend because they might just spring backwards, in which case you need to apply pressure, but it's also a chance that they're going to receive on their back foot and attack your goal, in which case you need to drop off. It makes it a nightmare for the opposition, and it allows your team to combine in these areas just much easier. Now, of course, the other thing that Carrick needs for this central progression to work is space. The middle of the pitch is so congested. Playing in these parts of the pitch is a lovely idea, but actually doing it in practice is quite a bit more difficult. You need to find a way to create space to earn the right to play in these positions. Carrick was very aware of this at Borough, and what he would often do is look for runners. He would ask players to make runs off the ball, selfless runs. Sometimes they will receive the pass, but sometimes they won't. But the point is the threat of it. If you stretch in behind the opposition enough with these runs off the ball, and a couple of times you clip that ball over the top, the opposition in their head, oh, they're worried. They're worried about the space in behind. So what they naturally start to do, let's say they're holding a high line and you stretch in behind a couple of times, the opposition just start to drop off just a little bit. They just get that little bit of fear in their head. They're just slightly worried about that space. But what that does is it then gives you more license to go and play in these parts of the pitch. It gives you more space in the centre. Carrick was very aware of this, and over time it made his Borough side very, very good in the middle. Now, as mentioned earlier, Carrick also liked his team to move the ball forward out wide, and that's not surprising. Like I said, he played at Old Trafford under Sir Alex Ferguson. Width is no surprise, and I think it's something that he would want to see from his United team if he was to take charge of the club. I think he would put an emphasis on trying to get the ball out wide, because, you know, Middlesbrough just done this time and time again. But not only would Middlesbrough just move the ball wide to recycle possession, they would actually use it as an attacking weapon. He would encourage the right winger in particular to isolate and take his man on, to isolate them 1 versus 1, to try and beat them on the dribble. His fullback on the left, he would encourage to arrive into that space to receive the ball. But of course, for any of this to be worth it, you know, getting into these wide positions is great, combining out wide is great, but for it to be worth it, you got to get a good delivery into the box, which was something that Carrick really helped his players with. But also, you got to have numbers in there. And this is something that Middlesbrough did very, very well. They scored a good amount of goals from crosses, simply because they had so many people in the box. So it wasn't just a case of a striker in there, sort of marked by about 140 players. There's support. It might be these players making these runs from a deeper midfield position, running into the box, but also the player on the far side, now making an effort, yes, initially to provide width, but now making sure to attack the back post to get that extra number in there. And this is how Carrick would often sort of overwhelm the opposition's back line. We know that most teams defend with a back four, right? So if you attack with a front five, you have that ability to find those channels of space in between defenders. And this is something that Carrick's Middlesbrough did very well. And I'd be quite excited to see at Old Trafford this number of players getting forward, getting into the box, attacking the ball, and, I mean, hopefully scoring some goals. Now, of course, Carrick's system and his idea is so much more in depth than this. Like with any manager, we could probably sit here and talk about it for hours. But I just want to do sort of a quick sweeping coverage of what you could expect if Carrick does take charge of United. I think it would be sort of a starting 4-2-3-1 shape. I think that would be his base, but I think we would quickly see the team moving to more of a back three in possession. Then it's about trying to find those connections between players, getting those midfielders linking with each other, trying to progress the ball through the centre of the pitch, sort of a common theme that we've been talking about the past few days, trying to get through the middle. I think it's something that United need to get better at, so perhaps in that sense Carrick would be a good fit. But also, you know, that wide play. You've got to get players into those wide zones. United have to carry a threat. It's what Old Trafford always demands, and I think it's something that Carrick would prioritise. Lots of early crosses into the box. So I think Carrick's a really interesting option for Manchester United. I can't say I know as much about him as I do as Ollie, for example, because we watched Ollie for, you know, literally years. I think Carrick's a good manager. I think he's sort of had testing and trying times at United as a coach, also at Middlesbrough. But that hopefully has made him a better manager. Someone who's got more experience of the ups and the downs has probably been quite good for him. I think he understands the club. So on an interim basis till the end of the season, he sort of makes sense. Beyond that, I'd have my doubts, to be honest, about his calibre as a manager right now. I don't doubt one day he'll be amazing. Right now, long term, I'm not sure he's right for United, but on a short term, till the end of the season, to help us, I quite like the idea of it. I don't think it's a bad call at all, but I want to hear from you guys in the comments down below. What do you think about Michael Carrick? Is he the right man to take charge until the end of the season, or should he perhaps be an assistant manager with Ole Gunnar Solskjaer? Let me know what you think in the comments. But apart from that, we are now finished for today, so thank you very much for watching this video. I hope you have enjoyed it, and as always, I'll see you in the next one.